Imagine a city where, for a few weeks every summer, the sun refuses to set. The sky stays pale and silver until morning. The streets glow without shadows. People wander out at midnight as if it were afternoon. Now imagine you're completely alone in that city. You have no friends, you've barely spoken to another person in years, and one of these glowing nights you see a young woman crying by the canal. What happens over the next 4 nights will be the most beautiful and the most devastating week of your life. Dostoevsky wrote White Nights in 1848 when he was just 26 years old. This was years before the books that made him famous, Crime and Punishment, The Brothers Karamazov, Notes from Underground. Years before he was arrested, marched in front of a firing squad, and sent to a Siberian prison camp. White Nights is something different from the heavy philosophical novels people associate with him. It's short, it's tender, it's almost embarrassingly romantic. Dostoevsky himself subtitled it A Sentimental Story from the Diary of a Dreamer. And in the last couple of years, it's exploded. Young readers on TikTok and Instagram have rediscovered this 175-year-old story and turned it into one of the most quoted books on the internet. Why? Because the loneliness it describes is something we all recognize now. The protagonist isn't a saint or a sinner. He's just a guy who spends way too much time inside his own head and who, for a few brief nights, finally steps outside of it. Let me walk you through what happens. Our narrator has no name. We never learn one. He's a young man in his 20s living in a tiny apartment in St. Petersburg with only an elderly housekeeper for company. He has lived in the city for 8 years and made not a single friend. He calls himself a dreamer, and he means it almost literally. He spends his days wandering the city, imagining elaborate fantasies, imaginary conversations, imaginary romances, imaginary versions of his life where he's brave and brilliant and loved. He has built an entire world inside his head because the real world outside has nothing for him. The story opens during the strangest time of year. It's late June, the White Night season, when the city is half empty because everyone wealthy enough has gone to their summer homes in the countryside. The streets are quiet, the sky never gets dark, even the buildings feel like they're sleeping. On this particular night, our dreamer is walking home along a canal when he sees her, a young woman, alone, leaning against the railing of a bridge and crying. He almost walks past. He's too shy to speak to anyone, especially a woman. But then, a drunk man stumbles toward her and starts to harass her, and something in our dreamer wakes up. He chases the drunk away. The young woman is grateful. She lets him walk her home. And in those few minutes, our narrator does something he has never done before in his life. He talks. He really talks about his loneliness, about his fantasies, about how strange it feels to actually be next to another human being. Before they part, she makes him promise something. She'll be back at the same bridge tomorrow night, but he has to swear not to fall in love with her. He swears. And of course, he is already falling. Her name is Nastenka. She's 17 years old. And on this second night, she tells the dreamer the truth about why she was crying. Nastenka has lived a strange, sheltered life. Her parents died when she was young, and she was raised by her grandmother, a strict, blind old woman who is so afraid of her granddaughter running off that she literally pins their dresses together with a safety pin during the day. So Nastenka can't sneak out without dragging her grandmother along. A year ago, her grandmother started renting out the attic of their apartment. The new lodger was a young man, kind, quiet, and full of life. He noticed Nastenka. He started leaving books outside her door for her to read. He took her and her grandmother to the opera. Slowly, secretly, the two of them fell in love. But then the lodger had to leave St. Petersburg. He had business in Moscow. He promised her that he would return in exactly 1 year, and that when he did, he would marry her. It has now been 1 year. He told her to wait for him at this bridge. He hasn't come. The dreamer listens to all of this and feels two things at once. Heartbreak, because he's falling for a girl who is in love with someone else. And hope, because what if this other man never comes back? What if she could be free to love him instead? He offers to help her. He'll deliver a letter to the lodger's address. He'll do anything she needs. And in his heart, he begins quietly, terribly, to hope that the lodger will never appear. Something changes in the dreamer on the third night. For the first time in years, his fantasies aren't enough for him anymore. He doesn't want imaginary friends. He doesn't want imaginary love. He wants Nastenka. And he's starting to suspect that maybe Nastenka is starting to want him too. They meet at the bridge again. The lodger hasn't responded to the letter. He hasn't come. Nastenka is starting to face the possibility that the man she's been waiting on for a year is never coming back. And then she says something that wrecks the dreamer. She tells him, sincerely, that she's so glad he doesn't love her romantically. Because if he did, it would ruin their beautiful friendship. He can't tell her the truth. Not yet. He just sits with her in the pale silver light and pretends his heart isn't breaking. They make plans to meet again the next night. If the lodger hasn't come by then, Nastenka says, she'll know it's over for good. It rains all day. The dreamer is convinced Nastenka won't come. But that night, when he goes to the bridge anyway, there she is, wet, miserable, and certain now that the lodger has abandoned her. She weeps in his arms. And finally, the dreamer cannot hold it in any longer. He confesses everything. He loves her. He has loved her since the first night. He knows it's impossible. He knows she belongs to someone else, but he had to tell her. And here is the moment the whole story has been building toward. Nastenka doesn't push him away. She listens, she thinks, and then she breaks into a strange, dizzy joy. She tells him she can love him. She's going to love him. She knows now that her old love is gone, and this new love, this strange, gentle, dreaming man who showed up out of nowhere, is the one who actually saw her. They make plans. He'll move in with her and her grandmother. They'll be together. It will all work out. For one shining moment, walking down the canal, arm in arm with this woman, the dreamer feels something he has never felt in his entire life. He feels like he is part of the world. And then a figure steps out of the shadows on the other side of the street. The lodger came back. It's him, the man Nastenka has been waiting for. He's standing right there on the other side of the canal, alive and real and exactly as she remembered him. She freezes. She looks at the dreamer, she looks at the lodger, and then she runs to him. She runs into his arms without hesitation. Every promise she just made, every plan, every word of love she had just spoken to the dreamer 30 seconds ago, gone, erased. She comes back briefly. She kisses the dreamer on the forehead. She whispers that she's sorry, and then she walks away into the night with the man she always belonged to. The dreamer stands on the bridge alone. The next morning, a letter arrives. Nastenka, tender and grateful, asks for his forgiveness. She tells him she'll always remember him. She tells him she hopes he'll come to her wedding. And the dreamer, heartbroken, alone again, does not curse her. He does not grow bitter. He sits in his small gray room and thinks about the 4 nights he just lived through. And he says something that has become one of the most quoted lines in all of literature. My God, a whole moment of happiness. Is that too little for the whole of a man's life? So why has a 175-year-old story about a guy who gets dumped by a girl he knew for 4 days become one of the most beloved books of this decade? I think it comes down to 3 things. The first is loneliness. Dostoevsky understood way before anyone else was writing about it that you can be surrounded by millions of people in a giant city and feel completely invisible. The dreamer has lived in St. Petersburg for 8 years and knows nobody. He invents friends. He makes up half conversations with strangers he sees on the street and never speaks to. That kind of urban isolation felt new in 1848. In 2026, it just feels like Tuesday. The second is the dreamer himself. Dostoevsky wasn't celebrating this character. He saw him as a warning. A dreamer, in his definition, is someone who lives so deeply in fantasy that real life passes them by. The dreamer's tragedy isn't that he loses Nastenka. It's that he spent 8 years inside his own head, missing every other Nastenka who probably walked past him on the street. And the third is the ending, that final line. Because here's the thing. The dreamer could have ended the story bitter. He could have cursed Nastenka. He could have told us that love is a lie and people are cruel and he should have stayed in his fantasies. But he doesn't. He says, My God, a whole moment of happiness. Is that too little for the whole of a man's life? 4 nights. That's all he got. 4 nights with a girl who loved him for less than an hour, and he decides those 4 nights were enough. That, having lived briefly, was worth more than safely dreaming forever. That's why people on TikTok are crying over a Russian novella from before the invention of the light bulb, because everyone has had their 4 nights. Everyone has had a person they loved who walked away. And Dostoevsky is telling us, gently, across 2 centuries, it was still worth it. It was still real. You were still alive. That's White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky. If this one moved you, let me know in the comments which one you'd like me to read next. And don't forget to subscribe. Catch you in the next one.